I know what it feels like to feel that crippling, overwhelming anxiety, and I also know what it feels like to thrive. And I'm not saying that it's gone or I'm healed. If this is a hard time for you, whatever you are going through, even if I can't relate to that specific experience that you have gone through, I want to sit in that hard time with you and know that somebody's here and holding your hand and they fucking get it. Hi, and welcome to Connected and Uncensored. I am your host, Michaela, and this is episode 1. Episode 1, for a long time I was wrangling with, do I have one of my special big guests on? Do I, make it this big and exciting statement kind of episode to try and make as many people look as possible? And I realized that the whole purpose of this podcast and why I want to create it is to show vulnerability and to build connection and to be able to have a space for a community to flourish where people come and they feel safe and seen and heard. And I guess the best way to do that off the bat is not just to show you all the cool people that will be eventually sitting on this couch here next to me, but give you a bit of an idea of who I am and why I want to do this and why I want this community to be so connecting for people. So, bringing that all back, let me start by introducing myself a little bit more. I am 33 years old. I am a wife. I still, every time I say that, I've been a wife now for almost 1 year, but I still, every time I say it, I'm like, wait, what? I'm a wife? Like, it still blows my mind. I find it so exciting. But I have 3 children, 1 biological baby and 2 step kids. And I am a psychologist in Australia, a general registered psychologist. So I see people of all different kinds, but predominantly my career in psychology has been with relationships and sex therapy. So I'm used to sitting with 2 people in front of me and being able to work through the dynamic of those 2 people to help them communicate as best as possible together and strengthen their relationship. But I also work a lot with people with anxiety and of recent years a lot more with an adolescent kind of community, which I think has been a nice shift coming into motherhood myself as well. But outside of psychology, I also have stumbled into, and I say stumbled because it really did just come out of nowhere, doing ASMR content. Now, if you haven't heard of ASMR, you are probably like, what the fuck is that? I'll just also preface that this podcast will be filled with some swearing here and there because this is all about being uncensored and this is all about being ourselves here. So that's what you're going to get. Yeah, my stepson and I re-watch ASMR and I do ASMR to him to fall asleep. I've watched it myself for almost 10 years and one day he said, can you make a video for YouTube? And I was like, oh, sure, I'll give it a crack. And then boom, here we are 10 months later and it is performing so well and it just allows me to use this different part of my brain. I get to be creative, fun, and very un-Michaela. So very Michaela is structured, organized, scientific, working through things in that way and influencing, and if you can see my fingers, they're very much in quotation marks there, and creating content like this is really none of those things. So it's been both challenging and really exhilarating. So that is something I would chat about in another podcast episode. I actually have somebody who's huge in the ASMR community coming on the podcast, which will be insanely fun. Can't wait to show you guys that and give you a bit more understanding of what ASMR is, past relaxing, past helping people sleep. So psychologist, ASMR artist, as we call ourselves, and a model. I've been a model for about 12 years now. that's the kind of nutshell of the jobs I have and, what life looks like for me currently. But why did I want to start a podcast? I mean, for me, it's something that I've always wanted to do. It's been something that I've been drawn to for a really long time for a number of reasons. And I guess, the main reason is in psychology sessions, I often feel like, we have to be censored in many ways. And the kind of way that I answer what people are asking me, or the way that I have to beat around the bush to try and help them get to a place that they, ultimately need to get to, can be, for lack of a better word, sometimes fucking exhausting, because you want to be able to just look at someone and be like, hey, you are standing in your own way. Stop putting the blame on them. Have you ever reflected on the fact that it's because you don't X, Y, and Z? Or, that's a real blunt one to jump straight into. But I guess there feels like there's a lot of that happens, and not just on topics in relationship therapy and therapy in general, but just in life, in conversations that we have. And I really wanted a space to be able to use the 6 years of education that I have at university and to become a psychologist here in Australia, and the 5 or 6 years that I have been working as a psychologist. I want to utilize all of that and come to this podcast with that expertise or with that knowledge and that background, but be able to talk about big shit with you guys without that filter that is required in my therapy rooms. So that's something that I've always wanted to do, and I feel like I do that with my inner circle, right? Everybody in my inner circle says that I am their unpaid, unofficial psychologist. So the best part about doing it with your friends is you can be straight up. And, to me, a good friend, like your real, genuine friends, they shouldn't be just being like, yeah, fuck them. They should be saying, yeah, but have you thought about that? How you said that came across really passive aggressive, or, So that is the kind of friend or sibling that I like to be. And I want to be able to be that friend, that, sister-like or mother-like kind of energy for you guys, bringing you really important topics and really important conversations. But obviously giving it to you uncensored is not just the main part. I mean, it's incredibly important part. The other part and the biggest part of this podcast is being connected. I think something that I've learned in doing this ASMR over the last 10 months is the community that has been created is so beautiful and so connecting. And I just find that, especially in 2025, having connection, having community, having a space where you can turn to whenever you're having a tough time is so, so important. And I feel like I want to be that place for people. I want my videos online or my podcast, whether you watch it or listen to it, I want it to be a place where people can say, I'm having a fucking shit day, or, I'm feeling really lonely, or I just want to have a laugh, or I really want to work on self-development and growth. I just want a place where I can go and feel like I'm hanging out with people that are like-minded and that really care about me. And this is what I want this space to be. All of my platforms, but my podcast especially. I'm filming my podcast in the upstairs living room of my house. Normally I have paintings hanging here, but my best friend is borrowing the open home. I just feel like this is a cozy and safe kind of environment. At home, I want it to feel like we're just hanging out together. A lot of feedback I get, and sorry I keep referencing my ASMR today, but it's quite relevant at the moment, but a lot of feedback that I get on my videos is that it's this real vibe that we're friends and we're hanging out and we're just on FaceTime, or we're just having a chat. That is the kind of energy and the kind of mood and atmosphere and vibe that I want for this podcast as well. I want you guys to feel like you are just hanging out with a friend, but a friend that has maybe, more knowledge and more an appreciation on how to speak about some pretty big stuff than your normal friend. So if that is the way that you can feel when you are listening to this podcast or watching any of my content, then that is my kind of goal achieved. I also think it's quite funny sitting here, and I'm sure I'll fix this over time, but if you're watching this, you will see that the light beside me, the lamp, is quite crooked because I have a almost 2-year-old and he decided to go to town on this light. And I just find those small things I don't want to fix, I don't want to try and make this made up. I want it to be as real and raw and uncensored as possible, right? And this is my life. I have a busy bee, almost 2-year-old that wants to rip everything to shreds sometimes. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to give you that. I'm going to give you and explain parts of me and parts of my life that are really raw and really vulnerable. And I'm going to do it because I know that builds connection. And I want you guys to feel that not only do I have this kind of expertise and psychology background, but I'm also somebody that's had enough experiences in life early on and, in my current life that makes me quite relatable. And I want you guys to really feel that on a deeper level, not just for me to bullshit and say, yeah, I'm really relatable. Like, I want to give you the why, you know what I mean? So this first episode is just giving you a bit of a snapshot of who I am and what my life looks like, what it looked like, and, where I want to go from here. So it gives you a bit of an understanding of the ultimate vibe and feel that I want from this podcast. And along the journey, I'm going to have different guests. Some will be sitting here next to me because they are Sydney-based. I've got some really big people in the mental health space coming on. We've got really big people in the influencing space coming on. I've got a certified nutritionist coming on. The episodes are going to be so broad ranging in what the topics are about. Everything from nutrition and changing your relationship with food and exercise to, sex and destigmatizing how we speak about sex and feel about sex and our fantasies and our wants and our desires, and speaking to our partners about that or future partners about that or ourselves about that, to parenting, to co-parenting, to having a healthy relationship. I'm going to bring my husband on for that one. To adult friendships, to figuring out what the fuck you want to do with your life, to figuring out what hobbies you like. Do you even have any? As you can tell, big, broad range of topics that we'll be chatting about on this podcast. And I'm really excited for every single one of them because I'm not personally the expert in every single one of them in any shape or form. And I love absorbing knowledge from people who know their shit in their field. And I love being able to present that to other people in nutshells and nugget form so that you can try and grow from that as well. And I guess, that's one of my favorite parts about being a psychologist is I feel like people come to me and their thoughts and their worries and everything in their mind is kind of like this tangled up ball of string. And when they leave the room, the image I have is like the string is just in these neat kind of balls that make more sense, I'm not there to get rid of all that stress that's in your noggin, but help you at least feel like where it sits and what you can do with it and it makes sense. And I'd like to do that with a big range of topics. We will be doing that, obviously, blunt, uncensored, but doing it with a lot of love for a beautiful connecting community and hopefully having a really good laugh as well. I love taking the piss out of myself. I love, just being real, raw and having fun. And one thing that I've realized in doing my lives, for example, with my ASMR is you can have so much fun whilst still talking about big stuff. So that's kind of enough of an idea of what's to come and what this podcast is all about. A bit more about me, I guess, why I feel like I could be beneficial to so many people to relate to. I currently in obviously a relationship with my husband's in a relationship. Well, that's going to sound really inappropriate, isn't it? If she ever listens to this podcast, she's going to laugh. We have a co-parenting relationship is the word that I'm looking for. Guys, this is my first episode, go easy. So we have a co-parenting relationship. We share two gorgeous children. And I think co-parenting in itself comes with so many layers, and it is not linear at all. And I think, it's got its ups and downs, but so much of that I feel is so beneficial for people to talk about and understand. And for one, I'm incredibly lucky. The relationship that I have with my husband's ex-wife is so great. She's a beautiful, wonderful woman. And the relationship that all three of us have is so connected, and we work together to make sure that those kids feel so loved and so happy. And I feel like that in itself, having a co-parenting relationship, having stepkids, having my own biological baby, having a really, really disgustingly, you guys are going to end up wanting probably to fast forward past relationship stuff after a certain point, but a really disgustingly happy relationship and marriage. I think all of those things speak to so many different people going through so many different things. My close adult friendships, I've got my 6 super fucking close friends that are incredibly special to me, only one of which I have had from school. All the others are made my adult life, which again I think is super interesting to kind of talk about and navigate, because I know that can be really hard for certain people. So I am going to have one of my closest friends on in one episode talking about forming adult friendships. But, that's the current life, juggling working as a psychologist, but also really wanting to be so present with my kids and wanting to manage a house and a home and wanting to have a deep and connecting and happy relationship and wanting to still have me time and my own identity. And, there's a lot of shit there that I feel people can relate to. So that's the current. And then if I reflect back on my past, which I think over time I will share so much more about, but giving it to you guys in a nutshell, I come from a very colourful, trauma-filled childhood with hey, let's fucking jump straight into it, eh? With an alcoholic father who is no longer with us. He passed from cancer in the end, but liver cancer, so, we might point fingers there. But he was ironically my best friend and my biggest hype person my whole life, but also the source of the most pain I've ever experienced in my whole life. Who'd have thought she'd cry in her first episode, guys? But that is something that, is very layered, very complicated, very fucking dark. There's shit that we could talk about there. But that in itself, life wasn't rosy and peachy for me. I was a parent to both of my parents right from the beginning, and I took on that role, and I keep that role. And it's something that I have over time had to learn how to put healthy boundaries in and not just slip into being that person for everybody. So I don't know, sometimes I feel like people can have a bunch of stuff that makes them relatable in the now, but maybe life looked pretty fucking peachy, or the other way around. But I truly feel like there is an experience that I have had throughout life that would relate to most people. And I guess the benefit of being the type of person that I am, even if I can't relate to that specific experience that you have gone through, I feel like I can come from a place where the emotion that you felt during that experience is something that I have felt deep to my heart and deep to my core at a particular time, and will make me really want to relate to you and make me really want to hear your story. So I hope that ultimately over time, you aren't sitting here just listening to my stories and the guests on his stories, but I can hear yours, and we can kind of complete this circle of connection. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is, I guess, a snapshot of who I am, kind of where I've come from, what I do now, and where I'd like to take this podcast and what it means to me. I think starting a podcast has just been a pipe dream that I never quite knew if I would ever do. Ironically, some of you will roll your fucking eyes at this, but I spoke to a psychic last year, really last minute. My best friend and I were like, you know what, let's do it. And that's one of the biggest things that she kept saying is, I feel like this ASMR that you've started, yeah, it's great, but it's going to open this door for you. I just keep seeing like the microphone in front of you and doing like a podcast. And, she kept saying that. And don't worry, I am not starting this podcast just because a psychic told me to, but I guess it just kind of gave me that final push and permission to feel like, you know what, just give it a shot. Because even before becoming a psychologist, I started a bunch of different degrees. I started criminology, I started primary school teaching. I was a personal trainer for a big chunk of time because I always thought to myself, you know what, psychology will be too hard. You won't be able to do statistics. Don't even give it a go. And eventually I got to a place where I was like, but it's what you love. So just try it. What is the worst thing that can happen? And why are you still going to be okay? Is a sentence that I try real hard to live by most of the time. And when I realized the worst thing that can happen is that, okay, I fail that unit and I don't continue on the path of psychology, I can do something else. I also thought, you can get a tutor, you can get help. And I did. And everything was fine. And look at us now. I kind of felt the same about podcast. Just give it a crack. The worst that can happen is no one listens to it. I thoroughly enjoy doing this anyway. Talking to myself is heaps fucking fun. So I am just going to give it a crack. And if I can make a difference, which I know I do on a one-on-one level with people in a therapy room, I know I do on a broader scale at the moment. I have about 190,000 followers in my ASMR community. And I get comment after comment about how it helps their anxiety, their ADHD, their feelings of loneliness. If I can even just get 1% of that across in this podcast, that would make me happy. I think another one important thing to kind of mention to you guys, being a psychologist, it doesn't mean that you have this great kind of mental health and that's why you want to try and help other people through it. And I'm sure most of you know this because I feel like there is a pretty big stigma around that psychologists usually have enough shit in their ways themselves. But I personally have struggled with anxiety my whole life. Obviously, coming from the childhood I did, I have this like image in my mind, right? There is a ship and I'm just constantly like, okay, there's a hole in it. Where's the next hole? Where's the next hole going to come from? Just hyper vigilant looking. So what do I need to be looking out for, right? And I have learned over time to really manage that anxiety so that now it doesn't impact me at all how it used to. And I feel, if you ask my husband, for example, I'm a completely different person to who I used to be on that front. And I guess it's just another example of I know what it feels like to feel that crippling, overwhelming anxiety. And I also know what it feels like to thrive. And I'm not saying that it's gone or I'm healed. I think I'll have it for my whole life. But I hope in this space, whatever you are going through, we can help you feel like it's okay, and you can manage it. I'm not saying we're going to cure anything, but I'm saying we're going to have a space where you feel like the person doesn't just get it from a professional point. They get it because they've been through it and they want to sit here with you. In some ways I want to imagine that you're here next to me. You are in the seat next to me. And I want to sit on the feeling bench with you, which we will go into that in more detail in one of these episodes, but I want to just be with you. If this is a hard time for you, whatever you are going through, I want to sit in that hard time with you and know that somebody's here and holding your hand and they fucking get it. And if you're going through a great time right now, I love this. I love this so much for you and it should be celebrated. I think that for me, life right now is really, really great and I'm so thankful for that. And it took me a while to let my anxiety shut because it was like, well, why can everything be this good? You know, what's going to go wrong? And now I just realized that it's okay for it to feel this good, you know, and I want to be able to share all the amazing goodness that is happening and that I feel. I think, you know, to finish today, somebody asked me yesterday on one of my lives, what is your favorite quality about yourself? And I think the thing that comes up for me instantaneously is the way that I feel and express gratitude. I feel grateful to my core for so many things every single day. And I express that gratitude to anyone that'll fucking listen. My husband and I have a saying, when we go surge, I'm surging. It means I'm having like an overwhelming way of just feeling grateful for the life that I have, every little part of it. Sometimes we'll randomly be in different parts of the house and we'll just hear surge, and we'll just know that that's what it means. But I know from a scientific and psychological standpoint, gratitude is the brain's natural antidepressant. And I really want to be able to help you guys not just, you know, have a gratitude journal and all the fucking shit that we hear these days, but to learn how to feel it in your core. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to my monologue and for taking the time, if you're still here, to learn more about who I am, who I've been, where I want to go, and what I ultimately want this podcast to be, not just for you, but for me, for us. So I'm excited. I'm excited for this journey, and I hope that you feel connected. I hope that you heard the uncensored version of me and of this podcast. And yeah, welcome to Connected and Uncensored. And let's do this.